So what I get to do now, I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Jennifer Henderson, and you're in for a treat. Yeah, I'll talk about cards here. See how hard he's working? Eat your dessert, Tom. Relax. Okay, Jennifer Henderson, who's with us today. Jennifer is the CEO and the co-founder of Strategic Decisions and has over 40 years of experience in the fields of community economic development, organizational development, and social enterprise. She's an experienced trainer and consultant to boards of directors in nonprofit, for-profit, and social enterprise organizations. So she's got a really wide range of experience with different types of organizational structures. Before she founded Strategic Decisions, she spent 15 years as a senior staff in community and leadership development at the Center for Community Change in Washington, D.C. She has worked with nonprofits and businesses in South Africa, Eastern Europe, and across the United States. Since 1996, this is my favorite part, Jennifer's been a board member of the Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream Company. How's that for a gig, huh? I wonder what your board meetings are like. She served as the chair of that board for 7 years. She's also served on boards of several organizations and socially responsible businesses. I think one of the things, I met Jennifer for the first time last night at dinner, and I think one of the most amazing things about her is she is an alum of the Pearl Harbor Elementary School. So Jennifer and her family lived in Hawaii 2 different times, and I'll let her tell you how many years ago that was. And 2 of her sisters graduated from McKinley. So I think by the time Jennifer gets finished with you guys in the next half hour or 45 minutes, you're going to be inspired, you're going to know a lot more, and she's going to challenge some of your thinking and some of your assumptions. So I am very pleased to welcome back to Hawaii, Jennifer Henderson.
I was trying to think. First, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Calvin, and specifically thank you, Tom, who I'm convinced is a brother from another mother. I was trying to think about why I feel so much, emotion about being with all of you today. And I think it's because the work you do in a place I love is so important. The moment that they said we were beginning our descent, I felt this coming home feeling that it's really quite different than all the places I've been. So I want you to know that this really is a family reunion for me, and I'm so glad to be here and spend some time with you talking about things that I think are important to all of us. It reminded me a bit in all the conversations I've had so far, and I'm going to actually move over here. All right, great. I was once very, very busy, as most of you are, busy all the time, and a friend of mine said, I want you to come to a conference. And then we didn't talk about it for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And then I get to the conference, and not only do I decorate the wrong room for my workshop, which really pissed off the woman that was doing accounting, I was doing a whole thing about leadership and boards and all this, so balloons and all this. I didn't notice that in the fine print of the invitation, she'd asked me for something else. So we get into the lunchroom, and there's maybe 1,000 people. It's a big conference. And I said to her, hey, who's the speaker? She said, oh, you were just so funny, Jennifer. Oh, my goodness, you're so funny. And I thought, okay, oh, God, please don't tell. Oh, my God, it's me. It's me. I'm the speaker. So I found a place that was like really with very few people in it, and just, I prayed, I meditated, I called for karma, I made a list of all the good things I'd done in all my life, that maybe God could just help me out this one last time, even though he knew and I knew there was a lie. But somehow I got through it. And so I feel like, it's not white paper this time, it's actually real. So we're gonna go through this journey together. I want to tell you a little bit about this experience of becoming a leader. and how it's not always so planned. When I was in college, I had a roommate who was a trust fund baby, and she decided that she would take the TV guide with her to every change day to try to figure out how not to let her TV shows interfere with her education, I thought. But it was really the other way around. She didn't want the TV shows to interfere with, the education to interfere with the TV shows. So finally, they had this great idea of putting a course right on our door, in our dorm, and on the floor of our dorm. Like you could go basically in a robe and, in sneakers or whatever, and just go down, slough right down to the room. Well, the year that I decided I was going to get Angela to take this course with me, we were at NC State, was on county politics. And this is like 1975, maybe. And we go to this course, and there's a woman who's speaking. And she's talking about hunger and poverty in the world, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really asking a lot of a friendship to have me sit through this. But Angela was intrigued by it, so I thought I'd sit there. And the woman had like Yvonne Picone shoes on and this all this beautiful jewelry. And I thought, what does she know about poverty? And she was not only that, but she was like the wife of an Episcopal priest. So I had, so all the class stuff, the race stuff, all the stuff was in my head. I was really not going to listen to this woman. And then she said, I'm looking for people that will go back to their home counties, this is in North Carolina, and make a difference. Because there are children and low-income people and parents and grandparents who are depending upon someone like you to care. And I thought, really? So I went to the bathroom, me and Angela, and I was just ragging on this woman, ragging on her. Ragging. The women in the room know where this is going. So all of a sudden I noticed that the house shoes that Angela was wearing had changed into those Yvonne Picone shoes. Oh my God. Suddenly, I realized I was ragging on the woman to the woman in the stall. Oh God. And it's kind of like by osmosis or genius or magic, she knew when I knew. It's kind of your body goes really, really still in the stall. And so she sees my feet are not moving. She's like, yes, it's me, Jennifer. And I'm gonna wait you out. And she did. First in the stall and then leaning against the basin with her legs crossed so I could see them and know that she was waiting for me. So I thought I was on my way to law school at Chapel Hill, and she convinced me by sheer embarrassment. Presbyterians embarrass really easily. Any Presbyterians in the room? Because I was a Presbyterian back then, and I embarrassed really, really easy. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. So I was supposed to go for a summer. That was in the summer of '76. And I haven't gone to law school, done some other things. But you know what? It was the right decision. It was the best thing. She was talking about Michael Harrington's book, The Other America. And she had been with a group of doctors who had decided they were going to check out what Michael Harrington said about poverty in the United States, that it was worse than third world, particularly in the southern parts of the United States and on Native American reservations, that if you want to see poverty, you did not have to go to the depths of Africa or India. You could find it right in the US. And people were really pissed off at the socialists, had the nerve to say that about our country, until the doctors went. And they said, you know what? He was wrong. It's worse than some third world countries. Because there is no connection between the depths of poverty that people can fall to and the height of greed that people can rise to. And there was something about that analysis that made such a difference for me that it really changed my life. And from that day forward, I committed to being on a pathway that would make myself and others more aware, paying attention to what was happening in the world, even if it wasn't happening directly to me, because it does happen to all of us. It's an illusion that it only happens to a few of us or a small percentage of us. So I thought today that we would talk a little bit about that pathway that I've gone on as a result of Yvonne Picone shoes and a lack of any kind of guts to say no to someone that I really wanted to say no to. So early in my life, beyond wanting to be a lawyer, I also wanted to be a marketer. And I was sharing with, is it Joe? Joe, where's Joe? Yes. I was sharing with Joe that I was a big fan of the show Bewitched. And if you remember, there's a witch, there's a mother who, has a real kind of attitude. And the husband, who really makes being a husband bad for everybody else. I mean, this guy's really bad. And then there's Larry, who's kind of a lech. And there's this guy like Charlie's Angels. That's McMahon of McMahon and Tate. You never see him. Well, I wanted to be McMahon of McMahon and Tate. I really wanted to be this marketing genius who would do all this cool stuff. And not with witchcraft, but with your mind and get people to do things. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. So the moment I started doing that work back in my own hometown, you know, of helping people to access food programs and access programs that would help them with their income and with their schooling and with their jobs, then I realized that this was part of the magic, that there was that, and that people could tell these amazing stories if they felt like that they were really going to be listened to, that they would calm down and speak out in ways that were going to be so compelling. And so I spent about 8 years doing that work in North Carolina. And in the course of that, I ran into someone with the Commission for Racial Justice who became my mentor. And kind of the first things, so the first rule of leadership is you don't always know how you're going to get to be a leader. Sometimes it sneaks up on you, as in with Martin Luther King. You know, he thought he was just going to a gig in Alabama, had no clue that he was going to do that. And in fact, even at the meeting where they said, the other ministers said, oh, well, we think you'd be good to run the Montgomery bus boycott, he looked around. Are you kidding me? I'm the youngest minister in the room. I'm the newest minister in town. They were like, yeah, you. So you never know. You've got to pay attention and be open to that. So as I was kind of moving through this process of learning how to organize, that's when I started connecting with the Center for Community Change and with this mentor. And the mentor gave me one piece of really good advice. If you really want to be a leader, and a leader in a world that desperately needs people to step forward, then two things. One is you want to be a rock leader and not an egg leader. He explained the difference is that if you drop an egg in hot water, it changes. If you drop a rock in hot water, it doesn't change. An egg does change. So he said you want to be a rock person. And the other is that you really can't lead unless you're developing the leadership of other people along with the leadership of yourself. So I used to think that leaders develop followers, but they don't. Leaders develop other leaders. So with those two pieces of advice, he said, you know, you're kind of good at giving advice and giving counsel because your ego was kind of okay, and you don't get in the way, and you might be able to actually do some of this. So I pledged to God that if I could really help, you know, other people that are really smart act that way, which is kind of the slogan of our firm, we help smart people act that way, that's what I would do for a living. That's what I would do for a living. So for lots of years, I did organizing. I was an executive director. I was a board member. I was a public policy advocate, and now a consultant. And I had the privilege of working with boards and staffs and building their leadership and their confidence and their capacity. And I really focused on what I call the 3 cornerstones of the integrity of a nonprofit: their values, vision, and mission. And we coined these descriptions, and they came from community-based organizations we were working with. That was the other trick. I didn't want to have a field-tested practice. I wanted to have a field-inspired practice. So we actually learned something from everybody that they thought they were, you know, learning something for us. Trick, we were learning from them. So values, this was the definition that they came up with. And this was in DC. Values are the beliefs or principles the organization holds precious. These principles are the organization's internal guidelines for distinguishing what is right and what is wrong, and what is just from what is unjust. The organization holds these principles tightly, and these principles are not changed or swayed by external forces. People talked about the need to stay true to those values and to never confuse values with strategy. They're not the same. Right from wrong, just from unjust. Then they said values tell you what vision is. So vision is the image of what our community, island, state, nation, or world would look like if our organization's values were in widespread practice. So if you have a value around integrity or a value around justice, if it was a widespread practice across the planet, your vision would come true. So what we work for is for a widespread practice of our vision, of our values, to create this vision. And organizationally, right, because organizations can have the same values and the same vision, but the mission is where you become really like a thumbprint, like a fingerprint, right? Very unique. Mission is a stated purpose for the organization's existence. is a statement of the contribution the organization is promising to make to advance our community, our island, our state, our nation, or our world towards the vision. It's the organization's public promise. When someone described to me in South Central LA that a mission was a public promise, I had a whole other feeling about mission. It was something that you be held to. I had an opportunity to go to Novosibirsk, and that was the new Siberia. And in Novosibirsk, I was told that they don't allow nonprofits just to hang out their shingle because they were afraid the Communist Party would simply just allow people to do that, and then they would be back in power again. So they would give you a provisional 501(c)(3) kind of status. And the first year, you'd report on what your mission was, report on what you did. That's accountability. But the third year, you reported on what your mission was, and it had to be a transparent test, meaning that other people that you had worked with, people that you worked on behalf of, taken money for, would have to come forward for you and say whether or not you deserve to keep your status. Wow, this is where you go, ooh, glad I don't live in Novosibirsk, right? That was scary. That was scary, but it meant that only people that were really serious were willing to take that kind of scrutiny. And isn't that what we really should be doing anyway, this idea of a public promise? So leaders may become leaders because they don't know any better, and they luck into it or they fall into it. There's a need to always be on a learning curve if you're a leader, and there's a need to be really held accountable, first to yourself and then to the people. So I told you that there were this pathway that I wanted to share with you, and it is 5 Ps. In marketing, we have Ps too. Joe, you know what the Ps are in marketing? No, you do it. You're the marketer. What are the Ps of marketing? Right. Okay. So say that again so we can hear it. Pricing, product, and promotion are the Ps of marketing. So of course I knew that. And I thought, well, I'm not a marketer. No Darren Stevens here, right? But I can use the same Ps. So I came up with place, people, passion, purpose, and practice. And I want to share with you some ideas that I have about those. Again, it's place, people, passion, purpose, and practice. So the first one, place matters. My earliest recognition of family and church and school and friendship occurred right here on this island. My father was a career military guy. He was an Air Force pilot who decided within 18 months of my birth in '54 that he was getting out of the U.S. His father had been a Pullman porter, and my mother's father had been a Pullman porter. Great jobs for black folks back in the 20s. And they wanted to give another kind of experience to their kids, right? So he wanted to give us this advantage to experience a life beyond the contained grip, is what he called, of mainland U.S. Daddy knew instinctively that travel and living abroad would be a powerful stamp on the character of his young wife and 3 daughters. My mother knew that to truly experience each place, we needed to live on the economy. Does anyone know what that means? It means off base. Exactly. So we did. My mother said it. We did that. So starting in 1956, we lived in Honolulu before statehood. Interesting contrast. For 3 years. Then Hamilton, Bermuda for 2 years. Then back to Oahu, again for 3 years, where I attended Pearl Harbor Kai Elementary School, and where my 2 sisters finished from McKinley. And then finally to Angeles, which is right outside of Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. So we lived literally for over a decade outside the US on all these islands. Many of them had histories that I did not understand or didn't get. But one story that I want to tell you about the experience of place and why it mattered was that in Angeles, they had 27 daily newspapers. 27. And you didn't get daily, you get newspaper brought to your house. You went to the square and you read the newspapers. And you read from the political left to the political right. And there was always a guarantee that one newspaper would be in English, no matter where you were. It was the Chicago Tribune. And so we were in the square, and we noticed, we had heard that a plane had gone down. 252 lives lost. And so even though I couldn't read the language of each of the dailies, what was the same? 252, right? Except for one. Anyone want to guess what the headline said? 3 Americans killed in a plane crash. My Filipino partners and friends understood what that meant. They also understood that Marcos coming to power was not a good thing. It was my first political education. It was place-based education. I have since understood, and in fact, Tom and I talked about the decolonialization of metrics, that there is so much to learn from these places that we love for their beauty, and we need to also understand other things that are happening there that we can learn from as well. And so that was my first kind of introduction to it. On this island, my family developed its fundamental character as a family unit. We established what we cared about, how we showed up in the world, how we interacted with others, and how we aligned our values to our lives, and our lives to our values. That last one was pretty definitive. I used to tell my mother that, I asked her if she understood there was a whole other world out there, and she told me that was what being a leader was, that you were consistent about your values. And I said, well, there's a whole other world out there that really doesn't operate that way. You do know that, right? It's like right outside this door. You could go outside and just see these people. They're not doing that. But she told me that I would live in that schizophrenia until I was old enough not to. So I think that Hawaii teaches us powerful lessons about family and community. And if you are a solid leader, you get the lessons of place. In each of the places that we lived, because we were so focused on understanding place, the military assignments turned into a real series of homes for all of us. Leaders honor place and build from its unique strength and assets wherever they are. And to remember that sometimes the best way to understand something that we care about is to see it from a distance. So those of you who have not traveled off of this island, right? Most of you have. But to encourage others to do it too, and then look back at the islands and see what you see is sometimes the best way to see them. So what are the challenges or lessons about place for us as leaders? We should love your place, do that, but be clear-eyed about what works and what doesn't. Lying to yourself doesn't help. Let's repeat that. Let's be clear-eyed. You can be in love, right? You can be in love, but you also know, right? You know what isn't working and what is working. Community organizations are by definition place-based. However, this requires helping people who live there and folks who come there to reach some agreement about the current status of what their home and aspirations around what it can be are. Leaders can and must simultaneously protect and challenge their places. Without this honesty, the good things stagnate and fade, while the not-so-good things expand and overwhelm. So when we lie about what's happening, or when we deceive ourselves about what's happening in our place, that's not an act of love. It's an act of betrayal. Nonprofit organizations are some of the best community learning institutions for leaders. Either on the staff or the board, effective leaders embrace the challenge of learning new ideas and concepts and strategies and approaches. They look for learning opportunities to stretch their thinking. Every solution does not have to originate in the place that you're at. It really doesn't. It can originate somewhere else and be modified to be appropriate and respectful in ways that work in the place that you're in. Effective EDs and board members also learn from what we call spurrents. Now, I told you that we spent all the time in the islands. Well, at that time, my mother and my father were both from Texas. And my mother had grown up in Fort Worth, Texas, after living in San Antonio for many years. And she had a cousin, Sadie. Cousin Sadie was 80 years old by the time I finally met her. And she wore cowboy boots to bed. I feel like I had to tell you this, full disclosure. But she told me, girl, you better keep adding to your spurts. And I was like, what are you saying? What are you saying? She said, spurts, girl, spurts. And a very heavy Texas drawl. Cousin Sadie was saying experience. She told me that if I wanted to be a leader sometime, particularly a leader of one, because that person has no option, as the people that you're sitting with while you're right in their chair, that person has no option either. You're the leader of one, right? Most people treat other people's spurns like using someone else's toothbrush. I may not have my own, but I sure don't want to use yours. That is wrong, 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 Cousin Sadie. I tell you, treat other people's spurns like a dollar bill. You don't mind if someone had it before you did because it's yours now. Spurns from an 80-year-old cowboy boot wearing. So we really need to be able to build that. There's not enough time for us to have every single experience we need to be good leaders, whether we're on the board or on the staff. So we got to get some spurs from some other places. Storytelling is how we hear about people's experience too. It's a powerful way to share lessons and experience, and we can lift up a place and present its assets and opportunities in an edge of the chair excitement. Have you ever had someone tell you a story and you're like leaning in? And the best way to actually get people to listen more is not to shout, but to whisper. And people lean forward, right? So the truth, unembellished, about our communities and about our work and about our organizations is compelling. Leaders tell stories, not fairy tales. Honest, powerful stories. Communicate, communicate, and then communicate some more. People don't organize, and they don't come onto staffs, and don't come onto boards because things are bad. Things are always bad. I mean, there's enough bad around. We can share the bad, right? But people come onto the boards and they come onto the staffs because they have hope. They have hope. And people organize. Saul Alinsky said, people organize not because things are bad, but they organize because there's hope. And Charles Revson, who I usually don't quote, who was the founder of Revlon, said, I don't sell makeup, I sell hope and a jar. So clearly it's got to be true if Charles Revson said it, right? So that's place. What about people? People are our greatest assets, right? And we said, leaders develop other leaders, they don't develop followers. Effective leaders on staffs and boards recognize that recruiting people to these efforts is heavily a retail effort. As you know from the introduction, I'm on the board of Ben & Jerry's. And even though we sell at big box stores like Walmart, still our biggest sales are at scoop shops and in grocery stores where some family member will come up and buy a $4 or $5 thing of Ben & Jerry's and try to make it last, maybe till they get home. But try to make it last, no, I'm kidding. Try to make it last for maybe several settings. But it's retail for us, meaning that it's done one by one with direct individualized appeals. That's the way that you attract people to boards, and that's the way that you attract the best staff. Successful EDs, this is a tough one, intentionally hire people who are smarter than they are. Let's say that again. Successful EDs intentionally, not by mistake, but intentionally hire people that are smarter than they are. And they bring the much needed, these really smart people bring much needed skills and expertise. These EDs have gotten past having to be the smartest person in the room. Anybody gotten past that? Because that is really a drag. You need to leave now. If you haven't gotten past that, just go on. We will go, ooh, once you walk out of the door, but that's it. They have the eyes, these EDs that have gotten past their own egos, have eyes that are like recruiters. They can spot underdeveloped, underappreciated talent a mile away, right? Blue dress, center seat. I mean, really, honestly, they can spot just like that. And regardless of the size, these EDs know what they need for their organization, and they go and they seek it. The staff that they want and the staff of the communities that they serve must have is a high-performing staff, which is what Kendall talked about. Successful boards are a mosaic of people who deeply share the values, vision, and mission of the organization. These people need to be a AAA threat. Ambassador, advocate, and activist in the support of the organization. Though these roles may look different among organizations, the absence of board members playing this role weakens the ability of the organization to successfully reach its goals and ultimately its mission. I remember that once when I was in my church lady role, and I was a funder for the Presbyterian Church, I went to visit a community-based organization. And I sat down to a nice gentleman who, said to me, ma'am, who is that lady over there? It was the executive director, and he'd been on the board for 10 years. Enough said, right? Enough said? So we need board members that really show up. We have board members that really participate, and they need what they need. It is important for them to get whatever information they need. We say in corporate America, nose in, fingers out, which means you sit there and you ask every possible question, every conceivable question while you're in there with the organization, at the board meetings, at the committee meetings, on the phone with the ED, on the phone with the COO, on the phone with the CFO, but you keep your fingers out. The day-to-day management belongs to the executive staff, not to you as a board member. But you have the responsibility, because the only reason why people can give money to nonprofits and not have that money come and have the money be tax deductible is because it's supposed to be for the common good. So you're kind of at the gate. You're at the gate and you're making sure that those organizations are doing the public good. But it is interesting. Some boards become almost homogeneous. Have you noticed? You know, it's kind of like newscasters. They all have the same hair. They all have the, black, white, Asian, whatever, the Native American. They all have the same hair. They have the same look. It's just kind of strange. I'm not sure how they organize that, but they do. Well, the same thing can be said for boards. Some boards are like all the same kind of people. So I'm not talking about even cultural diversity or gender diversity. I'm talking about other kind of diversity, like how people think. So if you want a good board, you need a different kind of thinking going on. So there are 4 main kinds of thinking. You ready? Creative thinkers. These are people that never feel like they got their money's worth at a conference unless the entire room is filled with what? The paper, right? The flip chart paper. They want flip chart paper and markers everywhere. They want to make sure they got that 1,000th idea, which was theirs, and they came from the parking lot with it. They want that to be written down, right? Creative thinkers. Critical thinkers can tell you what you were wearing when you said the same statement that they still don't agree with, right? Yesterday or the day before yesterday. They're the devil's advocates. Analytical thinkers they're really cool. They take the ideas from the creative thinker and then some of the naysaying things from the critical thinker, and they want to create a plan. So they're always about the plan. Can we have a plan? We should have a plan. What's our plan? Who's going to do the plan? Right? And the task-driven thinkers are, it is almost 15 minutes before our time we're supposed to finish. When are we going to finish? What's we're doing here? Who's going to take a task-driven? On the boards and on the staffs, you need all 4 of those types. But you know what disaster it could be if you have too many of even one of them. So one of the roles of board members is to pay attention to who is getting recruited. So it's not just what they bring technically, but if their spirit is around one of these and you already have 8 of them, do you really need a 9th? Do you really? People, last thing around this issue about people. People need and want and deserve to be appreciated and nurtured. Every single study that's been done about people that are in jobs of nonprofits has shown 2 really kind of stunning things. One is that, I know this is a surprise, people don't join the sectors that make money. Damn, no one really told me that. You know, I wish I'd learned a little bit more. No, they don't. They don't. They do it because they feel like that they want to serve. They honestly do. But the other part of this is that when particularly young people have a bad experience in government, they go to another agency, right? And when they have a bad experience in corporations, they go to another business. But if they have their heart broken in a nonprofit, they often leave the sector. And so part of what we struggle with is how to make sure that we are saying to people and meaning it, that they can bring their whole selves to this work, and that we don't break people's hearts in the result of it. A big piece of that is making sure that people understand what their roles are. Role definition is really important. And so my husband, my late husband, was a football player. And to keep me quiet during the games, because I say things like, this is really barbaric, this is really stupid, why are we here? This is really, and they would say, can't you leave her at home? Can't you, really, we will pay you to leave her at home. But no, that's not what happened. So I started noticing that football had strategy in it, kind of like nonprofits. There's like a team operating. I know that was, not a surprise to other people, but a surprise to me. I was like, guys hitting each other. But I thought, man, what a concept. So bear with me. This is like a real moment for me. The quarterback throws a pass to a place where there is no receiver, while the receiver runs to catch a ball where there's no ball. And why does it work? Because there's role definition and trust, kind of like nonprofits. That when we have role definition and trust, we seem to work better too. You know? Have you ever been with a director who tries to throw the ball and catch it? Ever with a board member that tries to throw the ball and catch it? Yeah. They need to go to one of these games like I did. That's what they need to do. But there's even a strategy for making a change, like when you get on the field and the other team has kind of figured out what you're going to do. They call that an audible. And so when they say things like green, yellow, purple, number 22, that's not like yelling out whatever. Like there's not a sale at Nordstrom's. It's like they're trying to say, yeah, we're going to change the play. But the trick is that you can change the play when everyone knows the playbook. So sometimes I've worked with boards and with staffs, and nobody knew the playbook except the top leadership. So if you want a team to operate like a team, everybody's got to have the same playbook. So that was a lesson. That was a really important lesson for me. So passion, purpose, and practice, putting those together. These are the last three. Effective EDs and board members had discovered their passion and purpose. They say that it's kind of like, I don't know if any of you know The True North. Do you know the book, The True North? Where this is your circle. This is what you're passionate about, what you have energy about, what you love, what you would just do. Even if you had the resources, you would do it for free because you care about it so much. And this is what the world values. And in that little sweet spot, you see that sweet spot? That's where a lot of people try to get, because it means that their worldly needs are taken care of and their passion is taken care of. So one of the challenges is to be able to do that with nonprofits. So what is passion? People have used that a lot today. It's an intense, powerful feeling or emotion that summons a compelling enthusiasm or desire for something or someone. When you are passionate about something, you have a deep curiosity that leads to intense learning. It is part of your conscious and your unconscious thoughts. If you've ever been passionate about something, you know what I'm talking about. It is like being in love. It is the highest level of joy that you can achieve, is to have that kind of passion. And passion leads to purpose, where you figure out, this is what I'd like to actually do for the rest of my life. You know, I feel like maybe whatever deity or divine thing or whatever you believe happened that created all this for all of us to be here, that there's some kind of thing, calling, that when you're in the right job, whether it's a board member or a staff member, you feel like you're right there in the zone. It's like an amazing feeling. So even if there's crap, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but Saturday, oh my God, the world has opened up for me again and I'm happy again. And it can get me through another, 72 hours. I'm good. That's purpose. And then practice is actually doing the acts that model that you have a passion and some purpose. So for EDs and for nonprofit boards of directors, if you are serious about changing the world, which we call transformational change, then part of what we are challenged to do is to be filled with transformative change. Transformative change means that we're changing ourselves as we change the world. Sweet Honey the Rock says we got to be the change we're looking for, We got to be the change we're looking for, and we're the people we're looking for. When that works, and it does, then there's a whole lot of change that happens. I want to leave you with one last story. It was a story from a client, Boeing, in Chicago. I usually don't have aerospace warrior people as my clients, but it just so happened that in Chicago, I was working with a lot of social enterprises. And the social enterprises were having trouble with their organization development, their business plans, and the rest. So I ended up working with them, and Boeing was the funder. And so I'm walking through Boeing, looking around and everything, and there's a big space shuttle replica in the corner of the room. And so one of the guys, like the CFO person, says to me, Jennifer, what do you do? And I said, well, I provide something called technical assistance. They said, oh, yeah, we know technical assistance. I said, well, it's not rocket science. He said, oh, actually, it is. It is, actually. It is a NASA term, and it means advice without control. And he went on to explain to me that when they shoot the space shuttle, right, which they no longer do, into space, that everybody on board is a pilot. Well, they resonated me as a kid of a pilot, I thought, why is that? Because we shoot them into space, but they have to fly home. And when they say, Houston, we have a problem, they're just given information, because there's nothing we can do to get them back. I said, my God, the launch is the reentry. And so I said, that is amazing. And he looked at me with such curiosity, he said, Jennifer, you think that's amazing? We read about the work, the people that you work with across the country doing amazing work. They're the real heroes, the ones that work to make sure children have enough to eat, and the seniors have a quality life all the way through, and that there's housing that's actually affordable. And there's food, and there's everything. There's health care. And people that are battered and bruised have a place to come and recover and find solace and safety. And what he said to me was, that's the biggest work on the planet. Not shooting someone to space, but making space for them right here. So I want to tell you that that story, when I heard it, helped me realize that even someone as far away as Boeing from this work, when they really get the kind of work that all of you do, board members and executive directors and other senior staff, they feel as honored to be part of sharing the planet with you as I do. Mahalo.
Jennifer, thank you. I was thrilled to be able to invite and welcome Jennifer here. This is a big room. I'll take a few questions for Jennifer. I will repeat them at the mic. We were going to do cards, but we don't have time for that. So I'll look for hands. Comments or questions? Yes. Favorite flavor, Ben & Jerry's.
I like New York Super Fudge Chunk, and I like fish food. But I want to say that we're starting an activist academy. We just started on Monday, and so I was on with about 80 young people in their 20s from around the planet who are wanting to learn how to be an activist. They are Ben & Jerry scoopers. We realized that we actually employ 10,000 scoopers around the world. And so these were heavily folks from India, from Africa, and from Brazil who were part of this first effort. So they are folks that are going to be turning the world upside down, hopefully. But we say that we are a social justice business that happens to make the world's best ice cream. That's how we describe ourselves.
So I've worked with Jennifer for many years, and there are lots of benefits of having Jennifer as a consultant. Knowledge, every phone call I feel smarter, but she generally follows up with coupons for free pints. So I have to tell you, it's not a bad consulting gig. Others? That's good.
I think I wore them out.
You did. Well, we wanted you to. Jennifer, thank you very much for coming back to Hawaii. We were happy to have you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.